Hey, it's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. Fresno, the heart of the Central Valley, the heart of California. A lot of heart going on, and today I hope you started your day with claiming your goodness, claiming the godness in your life before you even opened your eyes. Declared that today is a gift from God for you, that you may experience life at a fuller, more prosperous, harmonious, and peaceful experience during the day. Welcome. Glad you're here. We're in the third part of a series that I'm doing, which is based on the introduction, the 4 chapters that Holmes wrote to introduce the science of mind, what we commonly call the textbook. And so today, what we're talking about is the chapter that says what it does. We started with the thing itself and what a radical idea it was that Holmes took in 1938, considering everything that was going on, and addressed the idea of consciousness of first cause of God as being something that we could address as the thing itself and what that meant spiritually, and it means a lot when you understand it. Then last week we talked about the way it works, and simplistically speaking, we are the way it works. We are God expressed as us in our life, and God expresses our life through us, and what an awesome concept that was. So, today, what it does, and my hope was to do a chapter per show, but there's so much in these last 2 chapters, the introduction, that more than likely we will be splitting them up into 2 shows each. So this will be the way it works, part 1. And I'd say I'm not exactly sure where to start, but we're going to start at the beginning. And the reason why I'm taking so much time is normally I wouldn't be reading so much from the books that I talk about, the lessons that I talk about, but there's just so much in here that I really don't want to miss a lot of it. And even covering it in a 2-week, covering this chapter in a 2-week period is probably not going to get all the detail down, but we're going to get some of it. It's going to be good, and we're going to start with the beginning. And Holmes says we should approach the study of this science of mind and spirit. We should approach it rationally, never expecting to derive any benefits from it that its principle does not contain. We have so many people that oftentimes they get started in New Thought, in religious science or in unity, and they're moving forward, but they don't align themselves with principle. They like the idea of creating in their life. They like the idea of God being everywhere present. But when it comes to taking their consciousness and consciously shifting it from the old way that's aligned with the material world, that's basically based on things that we understand with our 5 senses, and opening their minds and their hearts and their beliefs built in their faith on an understanding of a spiritual world, that we are truly spiritual beings. We are spiritual beings expressing in this physical body, but this physical body is only a temporary host, if you will, for the truth of who we are. So we have to align ourselves with principle. And he says, never expecting to derive benefits from it that its principle does not contain. For while it is true that we are immersed in an infinite intelligence, a mind that knows all things, it's also true that this intelligence can acquaint us with its ideas only as we are able and willing to receive them. And there we go. That's kind of the deal. God is everywhere present. God is everywhere present in Spirit's totality. It was there before we were created, and it's here today, now, and in each and every one of our lives, that this divine principle, this divine givingness in potentiality is here today for you and me, and we can utilize it. And that's what Holmes talks about. And when we move to the last chapter, the introduction, we're going to talk about how to utilize it in our lives. We'll touch on a little bit on it as we go through, because you can't just not address that in some aspects. But imagine, if you will, no matter where you are in life today, and I don't care how rough it is or how good it is, it can be better. And if it's rough, Know that there is a promise, there is a light, there is a goodness awaiting you, but you have to be the one to make the move. It's not what somebody else can do for you. You got to make some choices. You got to start being responsible for what goes on between your ears and between your brain and your heart. You can't hold on to things that are not in alignment with principle or in alignment with God's ideas, ideals, whatever you want to call it. God calls us to express more in our life and gives us everything we need, but the caveat is we have to put ourselves in a position of acceptance. Now, some people think that by putting themselves in a position of acceptance, they got to give up stuff. Well, you may have to give up some of the things you're doing, but if there are things that you have to give up that you're doing, it's because they're not in alignment with principle. And when you let them go, and when you give that up, and you open yourself up to the good that's here, whatever it is you let go, believe me, it was worth letting it go, and you'll ultimately find that out. Sometimes people are afraid of letting go of stuff. I mean, when I talk about letting go of stuff, let's just talk about one big one right off the bat, and that big one is hate, And you say, well, I don't have a trouble giving up hate. But hate in varying degrees is expressed in many ways in many people's life. Dislike, prejudice, segregating yourself, being judgmental, all that's some part of that hate thing that says, I don't like, and it's not good. And when you do that, what you're doing is you're separating yourself out. What are you separating yourself out? Not from that which you say you hate, but you're separating yourself out from the unity, the divine principle, that which is God. And like we talked about in the last week's lesson and show that we are the way that God expresses. When we separate ourselves, we can't physically separate ourselves, and spiritually we can't separate ourselves, but we can in consciousness. And when we do, it's like God says, okay, you want to feel separate? I'll give you separate. You want to feel that the material reality is all that there is, with all its limitation and hate and disease and so on, and shortages and chaos and all this stuff. God will say, sure, I can give you that. You see, in both cases, God's giving. In all cases, God's giving. So we move forward here. The divine mind is infinite. God is infinite. We can't imagine, but we can kind of get an idea, right? It contains all knowledge, wisdom, but before it can reveal its secrets, it must have an outlet. And this outlet we shall be compelled to supply through our own receptive mentalities. And our receptive mentalities, remember, God is us expressing through us whatever it is that we hold in consciousness, whether it be in conscious consciousness or in our subconscious conscious, where our memories and our beliefs are held, what we hold there. It's not like you can say, well, God's not going to be able to, I'm not going to share this with God. It doesn't happen that way. Everything that you are, all of you, is still God. And if it's things that you've chosen that have, for one reason or another, separated you out, made you apart away from, then we deal with that. And we deal with it on the level of wholeness. In other words, it affects everything we do. Even when we're loving people, even when we're enjoying people, if we still have those judgments and those hatreds and those beliefs of less thanness, whether you realize it or not, it's still there and it's affecting your life experience. Moving on, we'll come down here and it says, perhaps the simplest way to state the proposition is to say that we are surrounded by a mind or intelligence that knows everything, that the potential knowledge of all things exists in this mind, that the abstract essence of beauty, truth, and wisdom coexist in the mind of the universe, that we also exist in it and may draw from it. But what we draw from it, we must draw through the channel of our own minds. And that's the key. That's the caveat. It's got to come through our own minds, So a unity must be established and a conscious connection must be made before we can derive the benefits which the greater mind is willing to reveal and impart to us. The greater mind being the mind, the God, the thing itself. And it's, it's everywhere present, There's no place, no space where God is not. It's one of the ways that I address this with people. And it reacts and responds to us all the time, on all levels. Now, once we begin to see that maybe there's changes that we can choose to make in our life and we begin to work on them, that's the beginning of our spiritual path, if you will. But for most people, it's a journey. It's not like a turnkey situation. We don't go from one door to the other and instantaneously here we are, because we've collected a lot of stuff. You know, we have our stories. We talked about having our stories. We talked about having to take our story, look at it lovingly, because it's our story, but we're going to make a decision in the moment that our story no longer defines who we are. So within that story is all the stuff, right? But we're going to take that story kind of like a history book. We're going to put it up on the shelf. We have memories of it. You can't erase memories out of the mind, but we don't have to let those memories own us. And memories we hold in mind can be active, and we'll talk about that as we move through this chapter. But memories can be active in our consciousness on a subjective, subconscious level. So we've got to take those memories, got to address them. We don't have to get super detailed, but we got to address them. Say, you know what? You no longer define me. I'm moving on. I'm realizing that this thing we call life, this thing that we call God, this I am, that I am a part of, this unity, is where I'm going to be and live and move and have my life experience. So he says, Spirit can give us only what we can take. It imparts of itself only as we partake of its nature. Got to partake of its nature. It can tell us only what we can understand. You know, it's an amazing thing that to fully understand what love is, you fully have to let go of anything that is in opposition to love. Because no matter how little it is, no matter what you think about it, it still colors and limits our understanding of love. And when we begin to realize that, we begin to address those issues in our life. And it's something that we don't, it's not about getting down on ourselves. It's not about condemning ourselves. It's actually about celebrating our journey, our truth that we're discovering and that we're imparting and embodying in our life experience. So he says, the infinite knowingness becomes our wisdom only in such a degree as we embody its intelligence. And I must stop there for a minute, because this word intelligence, oftentimes people think that we're talking about like intellectual knowledge or the ability to understand intellectual knowledge. You know, somebody's a math genius, for example, or a science genius or whatever, and we're thinking of intelligence on that level. It's not what we're talking about. When we talk about this intelligence, we're talking about intelligence on a spiritual hierarchy. And we have the option and the ability to grow our spiritual intelligence. That's part of what our journey's about. If you get a chance, if you've never read the Edinburgh Lectures, Thomas Troward talks about what this intelligence is and how, you know, through the physical evolutionary process of life, you know, through the eons, life is always pushing in evolution towards greater, higher intelligence. Well, once humanity reached a level of consciousness, the I am moment, if you will, we still have an evolutionary process, if you will, going on, but it's a process that's no longer driven by physical things around us, but it's a process driven by consciousness, volition, and choice. And we have a mind and a spiritual beingness that can guide us as we do that. And as we do that, as we understand a greater truth about who we are, our intelligence, our personal spiritual intelligence grows with us also. So we're going to take our first break. We'll pick this up when we come back.
With Organic Pastures Raw Milk, you're getting a product that has been meticulously managed from grass to glass. From our pastures to our dairy, creamery, and distribution, we work hard to produce a product that is safe and clean for you.
Chef Big Will presents the original Bonton Cafe. Stop by 7307 Highway 49 North in Mariposa for the best blackened or southern fried catfish. Go and eat good food and sweet drinks, including but not limited to Cajun and Creole, smoking barbecue, hush puppies, fried pickles, alligator tail, etouffee, prime rib, tri-tip, po' boy sandwiches, crawfish, oysters, fried okra, and so much more. Daily lunch and dinner specials. Sunday brunch from 10 to 2. Enjoy the taste of New Orleans at the original Bonton Cafe. And see their full menu at theoriginalbontoncafe.com.
The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find the Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
Harness the power of the sun and cut your electric bill down to size with Soltech Solar. Call today and request a free quote at 559-325-6907 or visit soltechsolar.com.
Looking for work? Tired of minimum wage? For as low as $200, become certified as a forklift driver at the Certified Forklift Training Center. Call 559-325-8097 or visit cftc.net.
Fresno Dixieland Society presents the Sounds of Mardi Gras, February 7th to the 10th, 2019, at the Doubletree by Hilton. Get your tickets today. For more information, go to FresnoDixie.com or call Linda at 209-534-1924. Again, that's 209-534-1924.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Wallingen. Today we're talking about the third chapter of the Introduction to the Science of Mind, entitled What It Does. So moving forward here, he says, it has been said that we can know God only insofar as we become God. Now, this is, kind of a figurative metaphor, if you will. But you got to remember that humanity was created in the image and the likeness of the divine creator, which means that we each express that nature within ourselves, that within our core beingness, if you will, that light of God exists. The urge of God to express itself through us exists within each and every one of us, no matter where we are, which means that, we have potentially an infinite goodness, abundance, prosperity available to us. But we got to find it, we got to understand it, and we got to embody it. So moving forward, he says, this is a far-reaching thought that should be carefully scrutinized. It is to be taken figuratively, for we cannot really become God, but we can and do partake of the divine nature. And that's where we come in, right? He says, and the universal does personally personify itself through humanity in varying degrees according to our receptivity to it. In other words, one, we got to recognize it's there, and two, we got to recognize our relationship and open ourselves up to that. One of the things that, and I think we might even be talking about this a little bit later, that God gives infinitely to each and every one of us each and every day, but we can only take away that which we are at that level of receptivity to it. And we're not bound to where we're at. And we can change and grow and expand. And that change and grow and expansion doesn't take place outside of us. It takes place within us. So we go on to say here, it does personify itself through man in varying degrees according to our receptivity to it. He says the universe is impersonal and gives alike to all. Now this is important to understand when we talk about the universe or God being impersonal. It means that there is no undeserving individual. But no matter how good you may have it, that doesn't mean that it's going to express for you. Jesus said that God reigns on the good and the bad alike, and the sun shines on the good and the bad alike. It's the same thing. In other words, no matter where we're at in our life experience, God is there for us at the level we open ourselves up to God itself. So being impersonal, what that means is we have to make the change within ourselves. God's waiting for us. Spirit's waiting for us. The gift is waiting for us. But we've got to recognize that we have a role to play and then begin to play that role. So he says, When we stand in the light, we cast a shadow across the pathway of our own experience. He's talking about the light of God. And we do stand in we stand in the shadow that we create in that light. Okay? And that light, that shadow, is as big as we have allowed it to be, which means that we receive as little as we've allowed ourselves to receive. When we open ourselves up to more, the shadow, if you will, begins to get smaller. Shadow's been talked about in many different philosophies in many different ways, but it's still kind of the same concept. He says there's a beautiful riddle of simplicity, and it is a beautiful and true thought to realize that every man stands in the shadow of a mighty wind and pure intelligence and the divine givingness. When we realize that, that's when we can begin to do something about it. We can make changes. We can make choices. And choices are powerful in the changes we choose to make. He says, not alone unto the great comes the soft tread of the unseen guest. The arrogant have not perceived this simplicity of faith, but the pure in heart sees God. Again, as we allow ourselves to align with God, with divine principles, then those principles work for us. If we don't allow ourselves to align with those principles, they work for us by working against us. If we're arrogant, if we don't think that we need to be part of it, that's fine. Because we're not dealing with a being that has feelings that you're going to hurt or not hurt. God is impersonal, doesn't care in that sense, and yet is willing to provide everything you need to thrive. But we have to open our door to do that. He says the intelligence by and through which we can perceive that there is a spiritual presence and an infinite mind in the universe constitutes our receptivity to it and decides its flow through us. We have made a riddle out of simplicity. We've complicated it. Through the years, the teachings, the spiritual teachings have overlaid so much stuff, and there's so many erroneous rules and things that people were, they were conditioned to believe that we can set aside. It's very simple. There's God and nothing else, which means within that which we call God exists everything, all of nature, all of being, including ourselves. We're not separate from, we're not apart from, we're all within that unity, that oneness. That's why, and I say this on a regular basis, when Jesus brought the teaching into the world where he says we're to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, and we're to love God with all that we are. And on these two things hang all the laws and the prophets. That's a powerful understanding, and he didn't say, except for the people down the street, or except for this person. It's everybody. It's everything. We've talked about it before, and we'll probably talk about it again. He says, we have not read the sermons written in the stones, nor interpreted the light of love running through life itself. The light of love running through life. When we talk about life, we're talking about the divine principle. We're talking about God. In the beginning, God created light. That light is life. There's one life. That life is God. That life is perfect. And that life is our life now. You can never repeat that affirmation enough. And just let it sink in. Let it saturate. Let it become every part of your being. He says to return to a sane simplicity is one of the first and most important things to do. Okay? And what he's talking about when he says return to the same sane simplicity is to throw off all the stuff that's held us in bondage and limitation. Throw it off and just start. Start as a little child, if you will, spiritually, and express kind of like when the prodigal son realized, he's out in the field, he's lost his stuff, and there's been, famine or whatever. Anyway, he's out there, he's working for someone else, and he's feeding the pigs, which, you got to understand in the context of that story, it was given to the Hebrews, that feeding pigs is not necessarily high on the list of things that were considered respectful in that day. And he's realizing that he's got nothing better to eat than what he's feeding the pigs, and yet the servants at his father's house eat so much better. So he throws everything off and he chooses to go home. And in that choosing to go home, he chooses to humble himself, to come to his father and say, just let me. And he never gets that far, because when the father turns to him, And he rushes out to meet him, and he gives him his coat and his ring and shoes and all the celebration that takes place. That's kind of the way God is when Spirit is first class, when we turn to it. It's awaiting our recognition of it and then incorporating it into our life. Now, the other part of that story is the other son, who has been at home all this time, living amongst all this goodness and wealth and abundance and experiencing very little of it because he chose to experience very little of it. So he's angry when he sees the celebration going on, right? And he goes to his father, and his dad says, listen, everything I have is yours. That you fail, essentially, that you fail to realize that is on you, but it's here. It's here for you, and it's here now. It's the same way when we make that choice to turn to the divine principle. It's here, and it's here now. How awesome is that? How awesome is that when you put it into practice in your life and things begin to unfold? Manifestations, demonstrations begin to take place. It's really cool. He says, so we are immersed in an infinite knowingness. The question is, how much of this reality are we going to express in our own lives? That's the question for ourselves. How much are we going to choose? And how are we going to choose? When are we going to choose? What do we got to do to make that choice? And the thing is, we start here, we start now, and we just make the choice. There's no burden that's laid upon us other than the journey to find the truth of who we are. And in the process, letting go of the things that have held us in bondage, if you will, the beliefs. The things that hold us down are not what other people do to us, not what we see the world do to us. The things that hold us down are the things that exist between our ears. Again, no matter where we're at, God in its infiniteness is available to us. And when we get that, then we can start making changes in our life. So he says, the direct approach is always the best and most effective. Insofar as any man has spoken the truth, she has proclaimed God, divine principle. It matters not what their particular approach may have been. The scientist, the philosopher, the priest, and the professor, the humanitarian, and the empire builder, all have caught the same gleam of the eternal glory, and each has spoken in his own tongue that language which is itself universal. The creativeness, no matter what we're doing. Think about this. An artist gets an idea, a concept, and whatever their particular method of art is, whether it be in sculpture or photography or drawing or electronics now. There's so many more ways that artists can go. It can be in music, okay? That they can speak in these terms that come from within themselves, that when people realize and get a chance to experience it, they realize the beauty and the honesty, if you will, that is created within, art that is created from a divine principle within themselves. So he says here, let us do away with the ponderosity of thought and then approach the thing simply and quietly. Approach God simply and quietly. Find a place. Relax. Pause. Reflect. You can meditate a little bit. Meditation's good, but a meditation that is just a peaceful meditation, if you will, is not as powerful as a meditation in which we are proactive in what it is that we do. So we move forward. He says, it is the nature of the universe to give us what we are able to take. Think about this. God it's its nature, its spirit's its nature to give to us. To give to us. And here's the catch. What we are able to take. And most of us, truthfully, aren't able to take a whole lot. Some people, they even have trouble taking compliments. A lot of people, because they live in such a consciousness of fear, that they can't take the time. Take the time, which is also a gift from the divine, to calm themselves and to accept a greater good, peace, and harmony in their life. Just making that choice to do those things can become empowering, freeing, opens up new vistas, creates new opportunities in our life. Things that we could hardly imagine become available to us. It's an amazing thing. So he says, spiritual wisdom says that God manifests through everything and is incarnated in all humans, and that all is divinity, and that nature herself is the body of God. Now, this is interesting because when he's using the word nature here, he's talking, of course, about all of creation, right? All of creation being the body of God. As we look to all of creation, and if we get caught up in the five senses, the materialistic understanding of life in the world, then we are caught up and limited by what the material reality can offer and what it's unable to offer. And yet, when we transcend that, when we open ourselves up to a spiritual recognition to what nature has to offer, we look at things that at one time we thought as just pure dead matter, we realize that the divine principle exists and lives within all things. And so, on some level, all things are expressing that which we call the life of God. Not necessarily at a higher level of consciousness, but still, when we shift our consciousness and the concepts, how we understand that, it helps to refocus, if you will, where we're at within ourselves. He says, the mechanical laws of nature are set and immutable. And we have to come to an understanding of that. We talked about the law in the thing itself. And the law cannot be separated. It's an integral part of divine principle. It's not separate from, it's just another aspect of. And we got to begin to understand that when we talk about spirit, we talk about love and law. And love is that potentiality, that all good. But the law is what holds us accountable, each and individually, to aligning ourselves with principle in order to experience and express it in a way that allows us to experience and express our life maximally. And as we do that, we're actually living our purpose for being here. It's an incredible thing. So, moving on here, I'm working from two different things here. Let's go. We got the universal, impersonal, the riddle. Let's go over here. It says, the divine incarnation is inherent in our nature. We are immersed in infinite knowingness. The question is, how much of this is reality? Okay, we've covered that, right? Spiritual wisdom says God manifests through everything, and we got that. The law, and this is it. And I got a little ahead of myself, so I'm going to flip the page here. And I printed it out here because it's easier for me to read as I'm presenting to you. But love rules through law, and this is what we were just talking about. And it's a simple concept, but it is critical that we get this. An intelligent study of the teachings of the science of mind, we come to understand that all is love and yet all is law. And if you go back a couple thousand years and you look at the spiritual teachings at the time that the master teacher was walking the face, you know what? I realized I slipped past our next commercial break. We're going to take our break, and I'll pick it up when we come back. We're going to talk about the master teacher at the time he was there. He was a real radical. I'll see you then.
Get your copy of Crouching Mama Hidden Veggies today, packed with recipes of delicious food cooked with hidden vegetables, so you can feel confident that you and your family are eating your veggies.
Contact Sprague Electric for all things electrical, solar installations, battery systems, troubleshooting, repairs, and more. Call 559-760-0712. SpragueElectric.com.
Are you or a member of your family beginning to show early signs of forgetfulness that may be Alzheimer's or dementia? The only way to be sure is through an expensive brain scan. Dr. Parminder Bhatia of the Neuropain Medical Center is helping in a clinical trial for those with memory problems, dementia, or mild Alzheimer's disease. Those accepted into the trial will have all costs paid for, from diagnosis to evaluations and trial medicine. There is no cost for those who are accepted in the trial, and there may even be some compensation for the patient's time and travel. For more information, call 559-437-9700, extension 310, and visit neuropain.com.
After a tough day at the track, cleaning up can be a time-consuming task. That's why we use Extreme Cleaner, the non-toxic, biodegradable, multi-purpose cleaner and degreaser. Extreme Cleaner cuts through even the toughest of grease and grime. Fast. Great for cleaning tools and work surfaces. Extreme Cleaner. Tough on grime, safe on the environment. Visit extremecleaner.com to find a retailer near you.
Hi, I'm the host of New Thought Talk, Reverend Steve Walling, and I want to take a moment today and give you an opportunity to support our ministry, support our show. You can do that through a PayPal payment. You send the payment through PayPal to the email address of Madera, MADERASAC @gmail.com. If you don't have a PayPal account, you can go down below the link and you can find where you can enter a debit or credit card. I want to thank those that have supported us and those that will continue to support us. You have a great day. Bye.
Christy Majors is your local real estate connection. With a solid, hardworking team, traditional listings, short sales, probate listings, and foreclosures are treated in a personal and caring way and close in a timely fashion. Since 2009, Team Majors has closed more than $75 million worth of homes all over California. Reliable and trustworthy, Christy and her team will go the extra mile for every client, whether selling or buying a home. So give Team Majors a call at 559-464-5606 or visit teammajors.com.
When you experience flooding in your home, you need to call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service at 559-213-9430. After soaking in water for only 45 minutes, carpet starts to come apart. Clean Master Emergency Flood Service can help, and not just with carpet repair. They also offer carpet cleaning, upholstery cleaning, carpet installation, and more. Call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service, and they'll be there in 60 minutes. Call 559-213-9430. Get your copy of Crouching Mama Hidden Veggies today, packed with recipes of delicious food cooked with hidden vegetables, so you can feel confident that you and your family are eating your veggies.
Contact Sprague Electric for all things electrical, solar installations, battery systems, troubleshooting, repairs, and more. Call 559-760-0712. SpragueElectric.com.
Are you or a member of your family beginning to show early signs of forgetfulness that may be Alzheimer's or dementia? The only way to be sure is through an expensive brain scan. Dr. Parminder Bhatia of the Neuropain Medical Center is helping in a clinical trial for those with memory problems, dementia, or mild Alzheimer's disease. Those accepted into the trial will have all costs paid for, from diagnosis to evaluations and trial medicine. There is no cost for those who are accepted in the trial, and there may even be some compensation for the patient's time and travel. For more information, call 559-437-9700, extension 310, and visit neuropain.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. So right before we went to the break, I was talking about this radical teacher, radical rabbi, as I like to call him, running around teaching something that was so foreign at the time to the people of his area, his region, that he caused a lot of disruption and chaos. But what he was teaching was an idea of divine principle of God being a God that is a loving God. And, you know, the kind of the general consensus at the time was, you know, God was rather judgmental, harsh, not so nice, held grudges, was jealous. And Jesus said, no, you know, God is love. And then it caused a bit of disruption. But when you realize that that was the truth, what he was teaching, that God is love, and as we are all created in the image of God, the divine nature, if you will, that love exists within each and every one of us. And it's important that we understand that. But it's also important that it comes with a level of responsibility, if you will, or a journey of learning and unfolding and transforming and embodying truths for ourselves as we go through our life. So he says here, I'm going to go back again, the study of the teachings of the science of mind, we come to understand that love and all is love, and yet all is law. Love and law, they're together. It's all the same. Love rules through law, and that's not ruling like, some kind of an authoritarian. It's kind of a, it's all of good is available to you in potential, but you have to align yourself with principle to open yourself up to it. And part of that aligning with principle is another thing that Jesus taught, and that is it's done unto us as we believe. And we've talked about belief. Belief is not just what we think we believe consciously. Remember those memories and the stuff that's held in the subjective mind? Well, we hold beliefs there too. And sometimes they're not really life-affirming. We will get on to that at some other time, and I've covered it in the past. He says, love rules through law. Love is divine givingness. Law is the way. Love is spontaneous. The law is impersonal. When we align ourselves through the law with divine principle, all the love that we can take and accept is there for us. And that's what we got to understand. He says, we should study the nature of reality, capital R with God, with this in mind. And in this way, we shall avoid two grave mistakes, either viewing life as made up only as mechanical laws, it's not, or viewing it as made up only of spontaneous actions, irrespective of law and order. And that's the way most people tend to look at life. We talk about life comes at us the speed of life. It's so true. But how we experience and how we live in life is determined by where we're at within ourselves. We look out in the world, we see chaos, we see disruption. And if that's our world and we live in that world and we own that world within ourselves, that's the world that's going to continue to manifest in our life. If we want to bring peace, harmony, beauty, love, abundance, wholeness, health, happiness within our life, then we have to align ourselves with that here and here, bring them together and let it become the truth of who we are, because ultimately it really is the truth of who we are. He says, as we gain a broader viewpoint, we shall see that life must contain two fundamental characteristics. Got to get this. We shall see that there is an infinite spirit operating through an infinite and immutable law. This is cosmos and not chaos. And I'll finish this. I got to come back to this, though. In this cosmos and not chaos finds an eternal existence in reality. Love points the way. Law makes the way possible. I've read this many, many times over the years, and cosmos, most people, and I ask people when I'm teaching this, when we read the word or say the word cosmos, what comes to mind? And we all kind of, the universe and all this stuff, and all around us. But you see, that's not the use that Ernest Holmes meant when he wrote this word, because there's another definition for cosmos, and that is order and harmony. And so what he's saying here, and I'll reread this, he says, in this, order and harmony and not chaos finds an eternal existence in reality. Love points the way, law makes the way possible. So when we align ourselves with this, love points the way, law makes it possible. We're bringing order and harmony through the law into our life, and that becomes our experience. And he talks about the scientific method, and I'm going to go through this real quick. He says, if we observe any scientific discovery, we shall see that this is the way it works. Some mind discovers a law or principle governing the science, and this is the way of love, of personal volition, of choice. This is the spontaneous element in the universe. Following this knowledge of the way the principle works, having discovered the operation of the law, the spontaneous element now rests at its case on an immutable reaction inherent in the law. All science is based upon proven principles. So basically what he's saying is, in a scientific process, remember, this was written in 1938. Science was really big at that time, and Einstein had done his stuff. The quantum physics was all coming in, and there's a lot of things going on in science back then. Not that there's not now, but people were really excited with science, and they like to incorporate it into all sorts of things, and that's how we kind of ended up with divine science, religious science, Christian science. In other words, the idea of science is that if one person does this and another person does the same this, they should both get the same results. Very simplistically, that's kind of the scientific method. If A plus B equals C, no matter who it is that adds A plus B, they all should get C. When we get that, then we've got a theory that we can make. And then we can take that theory and we can apply it in many different ways and areas. Our theory is that when we align ourselves with principle, well, one, that God is infinite. Two, there's a unity. Three, when we align ourselves with principle as God expressed as us, that God will express through us at the level that we make that alignment within ourselves. As we know the truth, as we raise our consciousness, as we expand our spiritual intelligence, if you will, we grow. He says, we should not overlook the significant fact that it is the mind, and this is capital letters, mind. We're talking about consciousness. We're talking about divine principle. We're talking about God itself, right? Which discovers and makes use of mechanical law. Okay? It is not this mind, or is not this mind, the spirit within us. We are on the micro, what the mind, what God is on the macro. He says, and we can never completely fathom the infinite mind. We shall always be discovering, because there's no limitation. You know, as much as we expand, as far as we go, as we continue to move and grow beyond, no matter how far we do, there's always that much more available and opportunities for us awaiting us as we open ourselves up to it. Since it is the mind which must first come to see, know, and understand, and since all future possibility for the race must find an avenue of outlet through someone's mind, we shall do well to look to the mind for the answers to all our problems. I'm going to go back and read this again. And as I go back and read this again, I want you to think about what you see in the world today, no matter where you're at. You know, if you're into news, if you're, into the world, events and so on and so forth. Put that in context with what I'm reading. He says, since the mind, which must first, it is the mind that first must come to see, know, and understand, and since all future possibility for the race, it's all of us, must first find an avenue of outlet through someone's mind. It must find an avenue, an outlet through someone's mind. We shall do well to look to the mind for the answer to all our problems. And when he talks about someone's mind, he's talking about our mind. That's the mind that we use. You want to change the world, don't go out and tell everybody what they got to do to make you happy and so that you can have the world you want. Create the world you want within yourself. Because we are divine, because we are spiritual beings, because we are God expressed as us. Create that goodness, that image, that likeness within yourself, with the expectation of seeing it demonstrated in your life. Hold to that. Align yourself with principle. It's an amazing thing. Chapter 6 of the Edinburgh Lectures, Troward talks about the what he calls the law of growth. And he says, we plant the seed, the germ, if you will. And oftentimes what happens is through doubt, through an attempt to maybe hurry God along, if you will, we basically destroy it, and we plant something else in its place, and that something else is called doubt. It's called limitation. When we turn it over to the divine principle, we got to do that in a knowingness of truth, that with the expectation that God is always God, that creation is always creating, that our life is that expression, that we are here to express God and here to express God maximally. And what that means is that we gotta get out and do it. Now getting out and do it for each and every one of us is not exactly the same thing. Getting out and do it, if you're an author, means that you're sitting down and you're writing your stuff. If you're an artist, you're doing your stuff. If you're a musician, you're doing your stuff. But if you are someone that's involved in teaching or in business or whether it's just getting out and seeing the world, hiking, exploring, you got to do it, because we weren't created to sit around and just wait for something and someone to do something for us. That's not living. As a matter of fact, that's a form of death. And too many people oftentimes make that choice. They wait on others to do for them. They wait on others to bring good into their lives. They wait on others, and you can wait forever. And it's not going to ever be what you want. You'll always be in a position of lack and limitation. And if you're in that position right now in your life, it's because God's waiting for you to take that step to really get out and do what you were created to do. You know, within the core of your being, there's something there that tells you what it is. You know, there's no limitation. I don't care whether you're 16 or whether you're 90 or 100 years old. There's no time that God is limited to you. So no matter where you're at in age, things are open to you, and they're open to you at the level of your belief. And it's important. He says, undoubtedly, we are surrounded by and immersed in a perfect light, a complete, normal, happy, sane, harmonious, and peaceful existence. We are surrounded by that. And if we're not experiencing it, it's not because what's going on out there, it's because we're not accepting what we're surrounded by. He says, but only as much of this life as we embody will really become ours to use. That's it. Oh, man, I blew past this. I got so much going on. I blew past the second break. We're going to take a commercial break. I'll see you when we come back. Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. And I've been blowing through our commercial breaks, and so this last segment's going to be kind of short today, but I knew I wouldn't get this all covered today, but we'll pick up the second part next week. But anyway, undoubtedly, we are surrounded by and immersed in a perfect life, a complete and normal, happy, sane, and harmonious and peaceful existence. But only as much of this life as we embody will really become ours to use. We have to embody it. We have to make that choice. What is that choice? The choice is to give up the things that are not life-affirming, and to choose those things that are, and to begin to build faith and belief in the divine principle. And we can do that. And we do that through practice. One of the things that Holmes talks about, if you ever have the opportunity to go through his home study course, is that we got to practice, and we practice, and we practice. It's no different than learning a skill, if you will. But this skill is a powerful one that pays off for us. So he says, as much of this life as we understand and embody will react as immutable law, and the reaction of the mechanical to the volitional. Okay? In other words, we can put the mechanical aspect of the law into practice through our volitional under our expression. And volition, what we're talking here, is the power of choice. Okay? And we can do that. He says, since an understanding of any law must first pass through our conscious mind before we can make use of it, it follows that with all our getting, we should get understanding. That's a big thing. And it's something that you don't need to go to a special school or organization for. It's something that you generate and you grow within yourself. The ability to be patient, the ability to be non-judgmental, the ability to accept the good in your life. And as you do that, your understanding grows. And within that, there comes a certain degree of learning that has to take place also. He says, moving on. Should we wish to know a certain truth, we should state that this truth is already known in mind, and and this statement will be true, but only the overmind must be accepted into our mind before we can understand it. In other words, we're starting out. Remember, these chapters were written for people, who were new to New Thought, to religious science. We're starting out, and we're working on getting understanding. We're working on growing our knowledge, our personal knowledge, our spiritual intelligence. And so what he's doing here, he's actually beginning to introduce, if you will, a concept of treatment, making a statement of truth for ourselves in a way that we begin to embody the knowingness of the statement of truth that we made. So again, he says, and I'll go back over this. Should we wish to know a certain truth, we should state that this truth is already known in mind. Big mind, right? In God. We recognize that. And that this, I don't want to lose my place, and that this statement will be true. But the overmind must be accepted into our mind before we can understand it. In other words, the overmind is God. It's the divine principle. We have to accept that within our mind. We have to make that choice to accept God's goodness, God's reality, God's expression in and through our own life experience. And that's a choice that each and every one of us has the ability to make when we finally get to the point that we choose to make it. And that's individual to each and every one of us. No matter where we're at today, if we choose not to be a part of this at this time, that's perfect. But a time will come. God is infinite, if you will, infinite in patience also. So, how then are we to accomplish the desired result? By stating and feeling that our mind knows the truth about the thing we desire it to know. What is it we desire it to know? We desire it to know that God is all there is. We desire it to know that we are, since God is all it is, that we are an expression of God, expressing it as an individual beingness that is us. And that as such, we have some connection, some access to God as principle to put into practice in our life. And we're also, we've got to know and embody that our life is our responsibility in that sense. That it's not for someone else to do things to make us happy. And it's not that we can't experience things that someone else does and enjoy and experience happiness. Yes, we can. But true happiness is created within ourselves. True prosperity is created within ourselves. True health is created within ourselves. True abundance, true harmony, peace, love, it's all here. If we don't create it here, there's not enough out there ever that will provide what we will need to fill the hole that we ourselves can fill by just making some choices. We each can do that. So, contains all knowledge. I think, I'm looking at time. We're about at the end of time. So I'm going to stop today. The next segment that we're going to take in this chapter that's entitled What It Does, right? What it does. And we're talking about it. We're talking about the thing itself. And we've talked about what it does, but we haven't really identified it yet. We'll get to that next week. So next week will be part 2 of what it does. If you happen to have a copy of The Science of Mind, we're in the 3rd chapter of the introduction to it, and we'll pick this up next week. I've enjoyed sharing this with you. I hope you've enjoyed as much being on the receiving end. I look forward to seeing you back next week. And like I say, we'll pick this up. God bless you. Experience good. Choose today that today is your day, because it really is. See you next week. Light of God surrounds you. Love of God enfolds you. Power of God protects you. Presence of God watches over you. Wherever you are, God is there. All is well. I got it in. End of the show, and I'll see you. Goodbye.